There's been a lot of negative sentiment around commercial real estate if you read the headlines in major cities and south of the border. But what is happening here locally in Saskatchewan? This week we sit down with Lindsay as he talks about the commercial real estate market in Saskatchewan and some potential real estate investing opportunities. Hope you enjoy.
This is the Saskatchewan Real Estate Podcast.
Welcome back to the Saskatchewan Real Estate Podcast, your home for all things Saskatchewan, all things real estate. Really happy to have a returning guest, Lindsay Suki. Lindsay, thanks so much for coming back on the podcast.
Hey, thanks a lot, Ron. Good to see you again and talk with you. Thanks.
As we get into today's topic, before we do, just give us a little bit of background on yourself and what you do.
Yeah, sure, Ron. Yeah, actually, in the last 10 years, what I've been doing is helping investors capitalize on the opportunity to invest in partnerships in commercial real estate with business tenants. It's an excellent opportunity. And but that's not really where I started. I got an investment degree from the University of Saskatchewan here. And in 2003, I had a mentor who had about 50 properties, and he was teaching me about real estate investing. And I spent time with him and his team, and I learned like a sponge from those guys. And so I got my confidence up. And from 2003 until around 2013, I went out and I purchased about 10 investment properties for my portfolio. So just simple things like investment condos, townhomes, houses with suites, and also some partnerships in commercial real estate. So once I did that and had those properties built up and I was building equity with time, then I switched my career into selling partnerships in commercial real estate. So the first 5 years I was doing that. I worked with 4 or 5 different real estate developers, and I worked on about $100 million worth of deals. So I had hundreds of clients that I helped place their hard-earned money into these investments. So once I cut my teeth through that time, then I took about 6 months break. And what I did was analyzing all the different opportunities in Western Canada. I was looking at different real estate developers and entrepreneurs and partners. And I found about Millennium 3 in that search. And I had called them and asked them if I could represent to investors and clients what they put together, the partnerships in commercial real estate with business tenants. And so they've licensed me. And so for the last 10 years, I've been licensed through the Securities Commission. I'm a dealing representative for M3 Securities, representing to clients what they offer. So that's where it brings me right up till now.
Wonderful. So someone watching this, they're kind of wondering about that client avatar. Like who is the person who is good for this type of project? So tell us about your typical client and what they typically say about these investments.
Yeah, so I really have like 2 types of clients, Ron. One of them is like the real estate investor. They typically have a couple of properties. They might have a couple of houses with suites. And they are finding right now that it's really challenging in this market to acquire those properties that cash flow well. Prices have gone up quite a bit. There's low inventory, and they're just not getting what they want in the market. So they're leaning more to these partnerships in commercial real estate now. They're easy to get into, and they're a good deal in terms of the cash flow and the aspects of it. So those clients are about half my client base, and the other half really are higher income earners, employee types who make, $100,000 or even way more, like $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year. And what they're talking about, what they're telling me is their income taxes are really expensive, and that they're maximizing the RSPs and they're maximizing their TFSAs, but they're still looking for more tax efficient investing. And the way Millennium 3 puts these partnerships together, they're designed to be maximally tax efficient for that high income, high tax bracket employee. And so they're really enjoying like seeing the opportunities and understanding how that'll work for them tax efficiently, these partnerships in commercial real estate.
Walk us through what the world of commercial real estate looks like right now, right? Like on the residential side, things are, insane. Interest rates are high, supply is low. There's this angst and fear of where things are. Just give us, from your sense, Lindsay, where's the commercial space right now?
Yeah, so thanks, Ron. Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to come on and do the podcast, is to let people know where everything's at. I mean, if you just listen to the news and like the Globe and Mail, I mean, they just talk doomsday about the commercial real estate market. They just talk about mostly what they're referring to, though, is the office market in downtown Toronto or downtown Vancouver. But that's really not reflective in any way whatsoever what's happening in Saskatchewan. So right now in Saskatchewan with industrial real estate, the vacancy rate is extremely low. It's about 1.6% vacancy rate in industrial space for Saskatoon and Regina. So that's just extremely low. So what's going to happen is the rents on these for these business tenants are going to go up. And what's happening now, in the past, tenants would typically maybe sign a 1-year lease and renew, but now they're signing like a 3-year lease minimum, maybe 5 years or longer. And now the leases have built-in increases consistently over time. So somebody might be paying, a $8 or $9 a square foot, or that's going to go up at potentially 50 cents per year every year, or maybe $1 a square foot each and every year. So that really increases the profitability of these properties. So basically, what Millennium 3 has been telling me is that this is the best they've seen this opportunity in decades. Okay, so it's a really good opportunity time. And also with in November, in last year, the Western Investor came out with a top 5 list for opportunities in Western Canada, and they highlighted in the top 5 was Saskatoon, the industrial real estate market. So with BHP coming in and doing that $7.5 billion investment, I mean, that's really going to push the industrial real estate market forward. So the Western investors predicting that some of the rents in Saskatchewan for these industrial properties could eventually rise to an all-time peak and further. So it's a really interesting report. And they go through some details there. And then also, like even in the retail market, in Saskatoon, the vacancy rate's about 2.8%, which is very low. There's very little new construction. There's really no new base for people to go to. And Regina and Northwest Regina, actually right now, it's amazing. It's unbelievable. The vacancy rate's only 1.3%. So it's a prime opportunity right now to be looking at commercial real estate. But most people aren't aware that they can get invested in this type of opportunities for less than 25 grand for one partnership unit. So I'm just trying to get the word out on what's happening in the marketplace. Hopefully people would consider this alongside other opportunities they're looking at.
So expand upon that for me, Lindsay. When we look at like thinking about investing in commercial real estate, the valuations of these properties is typically much higher than what like a residential real estate property would be. And so do you think that scares a lot of people off because they think I have to have, $1 million+ in order to get into one of these properties? But just walk us through how you folks approach that.
Well, it definitely scares people. I mean, even myself, I wouldn't go out and buy one of those, even with everything I know, because the numbers are big. Most people don't have $1 million or $2 million down payment for these properties. And even if they did, though, they don't have the know-how, the networks, the experience, to find them, do the due diligence, get the financing. So they really don't have that. But that's the reason why we like to use someone like Millennium 3. So they're the general partner. So the general partner is the person, they've got over 4 decades of experience with an excellent track record. So they have the abilities to find the properties, do the due diligence, acquire the properties, get financing. But then they use it, they syndicate them, which is just a fancy word for breaking into partnership units. So the typical property they do is typically around, $5 or $6 million, might have like 10, 15, 20 spaces that are rented to business tenants. And so they're the general partner. So they put it together, and they're also responsible for the mortgage, responsible for everything. So but then there's the limited partners. They are the investors. So the limited partners have limited liability to the property. They only risk the money they put in. They have no liability to the mortgage, but they have no say in the management of the property. But this is a great way through the limited partner structure to access these type of opportunities. You're working with someone who really knows what they're doing. They have the experience, and you have to understand that you can rely on them to do this. So that's the general partner, limited partner structure that makes these investments available to eligible investors.
Walk us through the aspects of commercial real estate that would help a potential investor understand this better, Lindsay.
So there's a couple of things really that when I sit down with people that I'm like, my role really is to sit down with people, make sure they're eligible investor and make sure they understand it correctly. So there's just a couple of things. It's pretty easy to understand, but I go through a checklist with people, make sure they understand some of these aspects to do with commercial real estate. But one really unique aspect is the business tenants sign triple net leases. So it's very different than in residential real estate. In residential real estate, the tenants typically only sign a 1-year lease, and then the landlord is responsible for all the expenses and the mortgage, right? But in business tenants and commercial real estate, the tenants pay the utilities, the property taxes, the insurance, and a lot of the maintenance as well, plus the rent. So then that the landlord, it can be much more profitable because the rising costs of the property really flow through to the tenant. And then as the rent's rising over time, that profit can potentially, and we plan to flow through to the bottom line, increases the profitability. They can pay down the mortgage quicker and increases the value of the property. So triple net leases is something that when people who actually already are business owners and they're renting space, they understand that. They go, oh yeah, I know. But with some of my investors, it's new to them, right? But then they like it. Then the other thing too really is cap rates. Like, I know for a lot of people, cap rates is like a mysterious word. It's like, what does that mean? And most people don't understand what that means, but cap rate stands for capitalization rate. So with all my clients I sit down with, I make sure they understand that process. So basically, like if you take a simplest example to explain it, say there's $1 million property it's commercial real estate with business tenants, and let's say you paid cash for it. Well, if that property produced a $50,000 a year in net operating income, that would be a 5 cap or a 5% capitalization rate. Now, if that same property produced a 60 grand in net operating income, that's a 6 cap. But if it produced 75 grand a year, that's a 7.5 cap. So basically, as the cap rate goes up, it's actually a better buy, assuming everything is right with the property. That's a better buy for the investors. And if you can get buy a property that's 7.5 cap, which we see often in our world here, and you've got a 3 or 4% mortgage, that's a winning formula. And especially if the rents, like with commercial real estate, what they're really buying is the opportunity. So we're really focused on the tenants and the rent. And say if the market rent is typically, let's just say $10 per square foot as an example. But if Millennium can acquire a property that's only renting for, say $8 a square foot, well, then they'll take their time, they'll work with the business tenants, but they'll get that rent up from say 8 to 10. Well, that's a pretty good jump, right? That's a $2 increase on an 8. That's I think it's 25%. So that's really good. So these are the kind of a few of the concepts that we talk about with the investors, make sure they understand them, and then also the partnership structure and how that works. And it's really once people see the properties that we bring forward is when they get excited, because not till you see the property and see the opportunity that you get excited.
Walk me through, Lindsay. Someone's watching this and they're like, "Oh, this all sounds. I'm very curious, or I'm intrigued to learn more." What are the steps for them to find more information or get in contact with you about potentially learning more?
Yeah, well, that'd be awesome. I'm just why I'm going to do this is get the word out. So basically, they could text me as a starting point. My phone number is 639-317-7480. Just send me a text, send me your name and email address, and I'll send you an introductory email, and we can just get started that way. That's the simplest. My email is Lindsay, Lindsay at M3, the number 3, securities.ca. So you can email me, text me is a quick, easy way. And then my role really is to make sure they're an eligible investor and to make sure they understand it correctly. And I have a checklist I go through. And once they understand it correctly, they can get on my list to see opportunities as they become available. There really is only a couple a year, like 2, 3 at the most. These buildings are really hard to find. And so they don't come along all the time, but we have 2 or 3 a year. And then once people are understand it, they're comfortable with it, they can include it amongst all the other options that they're looking at. And it's up to them if they want to opt in. So when I send out an email on a new property, I just give them all the reasons why it makes sense as an acquisition. And then they can choose to opt in, which means, reaching out to me and asking questions. and then work towards paperwork. So that's the process.
Brilliant. Lindsay, I like to ask everyone who comes on, you're a returning guest, so the advice might be the same, but if you could go back to a young version of yourself, what advice would you give?
Well, I think that investing is a team sport. When I look back over the years, I mean, the people who are really successful, you got to look at your team. Like, who's on your team? Add everyone in your team you can who seems to have done what you want to achieve, and working with other people. Like, a lot of the people I meet through this process, even if they don't ever invest with me, sometimes I'm able to help them achieve what they're trying to work towards, or maybe someone just knows someone that you need to know. They can, or it's just that confidence that comes from having a team. So I like investing as a team sport, and we like people to add us to their team, and as well as many other people. And it's just it's a great industry. It's a lot of fun, and everyone, my clients and myself, are financially motivated to do well, and just make sure you got a good team on your side. That would be my advice, rather than going, on your own.
Lone wolf style, better to be part of the pack. Lindsay, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your expertise. It is really intriguing to hear about the commercial side in Saskatchewan, because you do hear a lot of the news that basically says stay out of commercial real estate, high vacancies. And it's just to extrapolate the metaphor, it happens the same thing with residential real estate, that markets are crashing. It's a horrible time to buy a house, but everything is market to market. And it does sound like there is nice opportunity here in the province and a lot of good economic things happening. So I really appreciate your insight on that to help educate and let us know where things are locally. So I think that was excellent.
Yeah, it hasn't been this good in decades. So just wanted to let people be aware. And thanks for having me on the podcast again, Ron. That's awesome. Thanks.
Hey, thanks for checking out this episode of the Saskatchewan Real Estate Podcast. If you like this episode, if you found some value, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to never miss one of our future episodes. If you're in the market for a purchase, renewal, or refinance of your mortgage, I'm a licensed mortgage broker and would be happy to help you out with that transaction. Until next week, I'm Ron Caroni, your Saskatchewan mortgage professional. Bye for now.